So, Michael, welcome to the morning edition. It's a bit surreal because we've known each other a very long time, and yet you've never been on.
No, thank you, Samantha. It's lovely to be here with you.
Okay, so I have to ask first off, of all the conversations you've had with members of the Jewish community since Sunday's horrible attack at Bondi Beach, has the reality that one of the victims was a Holocaust survivor hit in a particularly, I guess, strong way or differently? Because you yourself, you come from what you call Holocaust survivor stock, so this is something you're very familiar with.
Well, it's something particularly poignant when you read that one of the victims who's died was a Holocaust survivor and had been through uh, all of that horror at the time as a much younger person, and then had come out here and recreated a new life, only to be gunned down in such a terrible, sickening way at a celebration, which is really, one of the most joyous festivals of the Jewish year, and which people have sort of taken for granted as a lovely way to end the year each year in the Jewish community.
And I should mention here, we're talking about Alex Kleitman. He was a native of Ukraine, and we know he survived the Holocaust and reported that he leaves behind two children and 11 grandchildren, just to sort of paint a bit of the picture of his life. And as I mentioned there, you said you are, you come from Holocaust survivors. So maybe tell me a bit about that. And I guess, yeah, perhaps even what your own response was when you'd heard that Alex had died. Obviously, it goes without saying, it's a tragedy no matter who died in this massacre.
So my own background, Samantha, is of Hungarian Jewish stock, and my father's family were in concentration camps during the war. My grandfather was in Mauthausen in Austria, and my father and his mother were in Auschwitz. My grandmother was killed there, but my father survived, obviously. And then he and his father came to Australia after the war and started a new life here. That has weighed very heavily on me all my life, really. I sort of have breathed in the shadow of their experience and then heard about it as I grew older. And it has sort of shaped, I guess, the way that I've seen myself and the way that I've looked at Australian society. And that's been true for a lot of young Jewish people here in Australia because of the background of the community. I always felt that there was this sort of bigger story hanging over me, and it it defined, I guess, the way that I would look at myself as a young boy in Australia. I would, I guess, gravitate towards other Jewish kids, uh, and there was a sense of something very strong in common in our backgrounds without really being explained properly because uh, many of us had had very similar experiences in terms of what their parents had gone through. Uh, and so, really, growing up like that, you have a sense of being a Jew and then everybody else being not a Jew. Um, and it's not very articulated when you're a young person, but that feeling develops as you get older. And in the last 10 or 15 years, it's taken, I guess, much more difficult and confrontational types of expressions because of what's been happening in Australia.
And so, Michael, I really wanted to speak to you today because of something you recently spoke about to the New Yorker magazine, and that is that Australia has a higher proportion of Holocaust survivors than any other country besides Israel. So, by how much is this the case in comparison to other countries, and why?
Well, that's certainly true. It is the second highest proportion of Holocaust survivors in the Jewish population besides Israel. I can't tell you what the exact difference is between us and the next country, but it is very significant. And it has had a crucial role in shaping the identity and the spirit of the community here. As to why it happened as it did, well, part of it is distance. At the end of the war, so many Holocaust survivors and refugees from Eastern and Central Europe, all across the continent, wanted to get as far away from Europe as they could. There was just a visceral urge. Many of them went to America, but a lot of people were denied entry into America. So in my own family's case, my father was allowed entry, but his father and later his stepmother were denied a visa. And so, like many other people, they heard that Australia was taking refugees and Holocaust survivors, stateless people. And so what that meant was that it made the community here very sensitized to threats of anti-Semitism, to the spectra of hostility towards Jews, whether it was minor, accumulated, or sporadic. And so that has shaped the ethos of the community over the generations. As survivors themselves have died, their children, like myself, and then grandchildren who have breathed in their grandparents' experiences and fears, then have expressed them, I guess, more openly as a community. And so this has shaped the way that the community responds to threats and incidents, and it also shapes the way that the communal leadership of the community also responds, because they are speaking to their community.
And I really want to ask you about how this ethos in the community, how this might impact the way a lot of Jewish people here respond to this massacre on Sunday. Because you and I, we may be a generation apart, but we are not, probably less than a generation apart, but we would have grown up, I imagine, with the exact same refrain, which every Jewish person I know knows, which is never again, right? It's
Mm.
something drummed into you. If we don't heed the lessons of the Holocaust and other genocides, it could happen again. If we don't respond to the early warning signs, it could happen again. So do you think that many Jews in Australia are now viewing this attack as proof that the government or Australians in general perhaps haven't been taking the signs of rising anti-Semitism seriously enough?
Well, I would say the way that the community has responded to it has reflected that Holocaust survivor background and the vigilance about anti-Semitism, and the sense that the threat is ever present. Speaking for myself, when I was a young boy in the 60s, 70s, and then as a young man in the 80s, it didn't feel that it was very real or imminent. But I must say that in the last 10 or 15 years, that situation has changed, and everybody else in the community would have felt the same way. And so there's a combination of factors at work here. There's the sensibility of older and then younger people in the community who have been brought up with that feeling of always being vigilant and looking for signs that something terrible could happen. And there's been the gradual build-up, even before the events of October 7 and the Hamas attacks in Israel, which I guess showed signs that there was rising anti-Semitic views and activities by groups. The COVID lockdown and the anti-government lockdown movement also gave a lot of support to some of these groups and feelings. And I guess over the last couple of years, many people in the community have looked at what's been happening with the rise of anti-Semitic attacks and outbursts and even violence, with a rising feeling of dread and feeling that something worse could happen. Now, that doesn't mean anything is inevitable. A lot of people have said that, but tragically, those feelings have been borne out.
And you mentioned just before that you feel like this sort of ethos of, I guess, Holocaust survivor, the legacy of that, you could see that in the responses of people within the Jewish community to the Sunday attack. Are there any particular responses that you're thinking about in that regard?
Well, there's a sense that the community feels that it hasn't been listened to sufficiently by the government, but the federal government, because they have been at all levels, both at a communal but also leadership level, pointing out the threats that they have seen through activity, incidents, violence, and intimidation, that they've been pointing this out, and they feel that the government hasn't been doing enough to support them or protect them. It does raise a question about what the limits are of what a government can actually do to prevent attacks like the one we've seen on Sunday, because governments create policies and climates and environments in which the whole society operates to try and deter and minimise social violence and anti-Semitic and other racist behaviour. However, I think there's a very strong sentiment in the community that the government could have done more. My own view is that the government has acted responsibly. It could have done more, but I thought that certainly in the last 2 and a bit years, it has reacted responsibly, perhaps a faster and more emphatic response to the encampments on the universities, which became such a fault line for Jewish students during the height of the encampment movement in the early part of last year. Would that have made a difference to what happened on Sunday? I don't think so. But certainly from the Jewish community's point of view, there was a strong feeling that the government and also university leadership, in certainly some universities, could have been more responsive and more emphatic when they responded.
And there was something that you recently said, again, in that interview with The New Yorker that you've just given to that magazine, which has covered this horrific attack on Sunday. Obviously, it's made global headlines. I think it's safe to say it's shocked countless people around the world. And you said, it's something you referred to before. You said, personally, growing up in Australia, this feeling that we've always got to be very vigilant about anti-Semitism, that this was perhaps being overstated and a bit of crying wolf. But since October 7th, you said you felt that you were mistaken and proven wrong. And that hit me, frankly, right in the heart, because that's been me for most of my life. And now I'm sort of thinking, since the Sunday attack, well, maybe my antenna hasn't been sufficiently, attuned, I guess, to warning signs. So do you think people are going to be just far more panicked?
I think this is going to change everything in ways I can't yet predict, but this has borne out the worst fears and anxieties of everybody in the community, whether left, centre or right. It's just a naked attack of pure evil, really. And this will make all Jews, and I hope other Australians, feel not just vigilant, but they will feel anxiety about how they then go about their life, the way they congregate, the things they do, the demands they will make of government for protection, and whether that protection will take away the sense of freedom that we've enjoyed in Australia for so long, because we will always be treading on eggshells about what we say and how we gather and the things that we want to do. I think that will certainly be a very powerful legacy of what's happened on Sunday for quite some time. Well, it saddens me to be talking about this because I've had such a happy life in Australia as a Jewish person, and so have my friends and my family. And it is very hard for me to digest exactly the enormity of what happened on Sunday. And people I know, Jews and non-Jews, who have been sending me messages from all around the world, are dumbstruck that this has happened here, and particularly at Bondi Beach, which is the spiritual home of Jewry in Sydney. I also had a personal experience about Sunday, which has been quite powerful for me. So my son is a journalist at the Sydney Morning Herald, and when I heard the first news of the shootings, I rang him to see if he knew anything that I didn't know yet. And then it dawned on me that because he has frequented Bondi Beach quite a lot, he might be down there swimming. And so I rang him to just get reassurance, and he didn't answer the phone. And I rang twice and 3 times, and he didn't answer. And so it was about perhaps 10 or 15 minutes that I hadn't heard from him. And I had this absolutely sickening feeling of dread, which is one that I know that parents all around the world in countries where violence is much more part of their social fabric have come to feel that feeling. But I never expected to feel it here in my home, and that has really rocked me and our family. We're very lucky. He escaped to safety. He was swimming in the water at the time, but he got away. But we count our lucky stars for that.
Yeah, Michael, it's I have to take a moment because I knew your son had been there, and one of my children was planning on going, and he was the one that called me to tell me that he'd heard this news. It was the first I'd heard it, and and that therefore he didn't go. And I had friends. I'm sure you also had friends who were there. I had friends who were there, and um, yeah, it's certainly it's rocked me. It's rocked everyone I know actually who's in the Jewish community and people that aren't. I mean, and then that's the reality, isn't it? I mean, obviously it's a tragedy no matter who dies, and of course non-Jews have died obviously in that attack as well. And yeah, it feels like maybe it's ripped something away, I guess the security perhaps that I don't know that perhaps non-Jews used to feel here maybe. I don't know.
Well, I
Well,
think,
many non-Jews, I should say.
yeah,
Obviously, there are other Australians who are members of the communities who are also persecuted.
yeah, I think there are all Australians will be rocked by this. Um, Something like this happening at Australia's best known beach on a beautiful summer's afternoon where people go all year round. Uh, it has heartened me that I've had so much support from people I know from not just within the Jewish community, but from all parts of Australia and certainly non-Jewish. Um, and I think the Jewish community will be looking for tangible evidence of support and love from uh, the broader community in the weeks and months ahead, and for visible signs of support at rallies and at meetings and at all different levels of society, informal and formal, to show that they are us and we are them.
And Michael, I just wanted to ask you, I know you are a noted writer on Australian Jewry and on various topics, including incredible history of your own family. You had a relative who was a noted antiquarian bookseller who sold fragments of the Gutenberg Bible, and it's one of the biggest controversies, I think, in literary history. So you're no stranger to writing and speaking about Jewish topics, but is it difficult at all to speak about this?
Well, it has been a difficult subject, certainly when I was much younger. As I said, from my father's own experiences and that of my family, I think I always had a little voice of my father and his friends in my ear every time I was asked to speak about Jewish identity, about anti-Semitism, and about Israel. And the voice has never really left me, but as I've done it more and more, the sensitivity of speaking about it has softened a bit, uh, but it's still not an easy thing to talk about, and many Jews in the community feel almost frozen about talking about it to people outside the community. And I think this stems in large part from the Holocaust survivor background of the community that we spoke about earlier.
And tell me what underpins that? Is it fear? Is it this sort of like don't make yourself a spectacle, like you could be a target? Is that what it is, or is it something else?
I think it goes back to this feeling that if you speak outside, you can make yourself a target. You may air dirty washing, and that anything that puts you up over the horizon on the radar then makes you vulnerable. And historically, Jews have always felt like targets, and so that feeling plays into a very ancient sentiment that you don't want to do anything that attracts trouble or attracts attention, and better to turn inwards and deal with it amongst yourselves. And so that has led to very different views about how Jews want to engage with broader society. And I think we've seen that played out in the very difficult public discourse and debate that's occurred after October 7, where most people have felt like they're on eggshells whenever they even mention the subject of anti-Semitism in Israel.
Yeah. Well, Michael, it's horrible to reacquaint myself with you during a time like this, but thank God your son and the rest of your family and you are safe. And thank you so much for your time.
I won't say it's been a pleasure, but it's been good to speak to you again, Samantha. Thank you.